Okay, I would like to please welcome Paul DeYoung, whose 40-year journey took him from a garden center groundskeeper to co-owner of Landscape Garden Centers in Sioux Falls. Despite facing major health challenges, including a Parkinson's diagnosis, Paul has remained an enthusiastic advocate and mentor. He was honored with the South Dakota Parkinson Foundation Friend Award in 2023 and inducted into the South Dakota Nursery and Landscape Association's Hall of Fame in 2024. Paul inspires others to find beauty in life's challenges and to appreciate the world around them. He is joined today by his speech therapist, Tina Jacobson, who is assisting him with his presentation and making sure he is speaking loud enough for all of us to hear. Thank you, Paul and Tina, for sharing your time and your story with us today. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, well, thank you. So I'd like to introduce my friend here, again, Paul DeYoung. I've had the pleasure of getting to know Paul over the last several years. After he was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, he came to our therapy clinic at Avera. So welcome, Paul. We're happy to have you here to share your story with us today.
Well, thanks, Tina. That's great. They're bragging me up earlier, but when Stephanie Myers initially asked me, she said they were looking for somebody tall, dark, and handsome. And then she came back a week later and said they were unable to find anybody like that, so then she asked me.
We got the right guy. Don't worry.
So here I am. Take me or leave me.
Very good. So we're looking at the title here. The title of your presentation today is Bloom Where You're Planted. So can you explain what that means to you, or how did you come up with that title?
Well, many years ago, I believe I was a teenager, my mom had a magnet on the fridge with a flower on it that said, "Bloom where you're planted." At that time, I gave it no thought like most teenagers. Then I seen it again in a situation. At that time, I was moving from my home into assisted living. And of course, wasn't in anybody's 20 or 30-year plan. So I was very early 60s, and I was in somewhere totally foreign. So then it came to my mind again as there's a lot of situations in life where you're not happy about, but you can either wither and be gone, or you can temporarily be transplanted somewhere and flourish while you're there, or you can make a lifetime legacy out of it. Mm-hmm. So that's been my motto, and I got to remind myself out of a lot, because I'm not trying to sound like some hero or superhuman being. I think that power exists in all of us. We choose where we're planted, and we do the best we can and flower the best we can under the situation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So now, can you tell us a little background on yourself? When you were diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, when that was, I understand your father also had Parkinson's disease. Is that correct?
Yes, he did. And it was kind of, I remember when he had it, he got Lewy body dementia after that, so his quality of life was not fun to see the last few years of his life. So when I was diagnosed, I was terrified. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't, what the doctor did say, if you've seen one person with Parkinson's, you've seen one person, because everybody's trail is different. So mm-hmm. I've been involved with physical therapy and exercise since the onset. I've tried to adjust my lifestyle. So only God knows how fast mm-hmm. I'll progress, because we'll see, I don't know if those pictures are on the slide, like 4 years ago I was able to.
Yeah, so this is you and your dad, right?
That's me and my father. At that time, I believe he was nonverbal. Mm-hmm. But that's a very good picture of us. It brings back good memories. Mm-hmm. So
Yep.
So that was probably about 10 years ago. He's been gone about 5 years now, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong, sis. And yeah, so it's about 5 years.
Okay. Okay. So let's go back to this slide here, Paul. So when you were diagnosed with Parkinson's, can you tell us a little bit, what was your mindset? I mean, on the screen, I know this is a quote that means a lot to you. Responsibility is the ability to choose our response to any circumstance or condition. So what does that mean to you? Can you explain that?
I always use that if somebody asks me to do something, if I'm able to do something, we always got to ask ourselves. The responsibility breaks into two words, and I never thought of it that way, but we got to assess what our ability is. And although I don't speak as well as I used to, and I don't move around as well as I used to, I still have some abilities. So then I decipher. Most times it'd be easier to say no. Like, there's no comfort in getting in front of hundreds of people, but always, what's my response going to be based on my ability? So I think it's easy to say no to things, but if the more times you can say yes and say yes, I can do it, the more it's going to keep your self-esteem and mental awareness up. So we got to continue to challenge ourselves. We can't use the excuse, well, I've lost this, I've lost that. I've gained a lot of things that I would never had if I wasn't diagnosed with some health issues. So sometimes we gotta be effective communicators to help touch, because if we can just touch one person a day, that adds up to be a lot of people over time.
Yes, very true.
So as you remember, responsibility is two words.
Yes. So let's move on to, let's talk about your family a little bit. Can you tell us a little bit about your family? I know you have 3 children. And here are we've got some pictures up here, some of your favorite adventures. Many of these adventures I see were with your kids, your family, and many of them were even after you were diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. And I know you still made a point to do what you could to enjoy, all those special times with your family, because you wanted to keep moving forward, right?
Yes, I did. And like I said, it was a big adjustment period. So it was a tough haul, but there's some.
What's that first picture there? That's one of your favorite places, you told me, on the far left.
Yeah, my 2 sons and I and my cousin and uncle went to Eureka, California, to the Redwood Forest. Unfortunately, my daughter wasn't along, much to her chagrin. But it was definitely one of the favorite places I've ever been. It's almost a spiritual experience, looking up and seeing. You can hardly see the sky, and it's like pin quiet. You don't even hear birds or breeze, so it's quite awe-inspiring. So we spent some good time. There's a picture of my daughter and I before she was going on an outing. So, and we've spent a lot of time together. We spent a lot of time on the phone. So some of my favorite memories are, of course, my God coming first. My kids are second in my life.
And here's a picture of you've got 3 children, right? Some of them are here?
Yes, that's my daughter, Maddie, with me standing there with the life alert on. My youngest son, Alex, and his fiancée, and my firstborn son, Tyler, with his wife, Jenny, and I love them all dearly, so I'm very proud of them.
Yep. So I think we got one more picture here, yep, of your family. So, speaking of family, Paul, how did they react to your Parkinson's diagnosis? Were they with you? It was probably a lot for them to take on as well.
Well, I think we had some discussion on it. A lot of them, I don't know if I did a great job with that, but a lot of them, they just had a process on their own. And that's one thing I noticed. My wife and I were on the way back. You get diagnosed, this first Dr. Boyle from Avera said, I want you to go to either Iowa City or Rochester and have them diagnose it, a major medical. So they diagnosed it. And then all of a sudden you're on the way home and you say to yourself, I've got Parkinson's disease. So I was with my wife and we couldn't find any resources on it. And so it's almost like you're in this abyss where do I turn next? That's why I think it would be important to do a book or brochure on something like, I have Parkinson's disease, now what? Even title it that. Because I think that would be very valuable. And then I got a hold of Stephanie Myers by chance. I thought it was counseling for, then she said I had to make a session. I didn't realize it was physical therapy, so she had me hooked for a while from that point, so she tricked me into it.
She is like a counselor.
Yes. But speaking of life, blessings in life, between Tina, Amanda, and Stephanie, they've become very, very important people in my life. I look forward to therapy with those three because therapists have a servant's heart. They're not in it for the money. I've never met anybody there that was not a people person. So high marks to Avera Therapy.
Thank you. We see some more pictures. We all know you have a love for the outdoors. You know, some fishing trips there. And that other one there is in California, correct?
Yes, that was when I'm trying to sound smart now, where two rivers meet, that's a confluence. And there was a confluence there with, it was one of the prettiest places I've ever seen at Pebble Beach. That water was crystal clear. There I am. I think my oldest son caught those two walleyes in the next picture, but I posed with him, so I got the credit. So they took care of the old man. And there was several of my employees at Landscape Garden Center. That was a few years ago. And if you look at that picture closely, I was still kind of squared up, and I could walk without any aid. But you could see my hand was kind of stiff or turned directions. And that's one of the first.
So one of your first symptoms.
First symptoms that I seen.
Kind of noticed.
My feet were shuffling, and like your arm swings, Lee, as a lot of you from here know.
Yes, yes. And I know with this photo that you've always had a passion for the outdoors and worked many years helping, build the city of Sioux Falls, right? Helping families, planting, picking out trees, landscaping. And you always said it was more than just the landscaping, right? Just more than trees.
This was more than that. It was about the people. And once I decided that I loved trees and plants and it was more about my employees or customers, that's when life really became fun. It's because I've never sold anything in my life. I just helped people achieve their goals, whether it be in life or in their yard. Because a yard is an extension of a person's life. We look forward to summer when we can spend time out with family and spend some time outside.
So then it was about 40 years, you said, right? You were 40 years in the business when then you had to step down from that position.
Yes,
that
so
right?
it was just short of that. That was a big adjustment from going to an ownership position. Then I consulted part-time for a few years, but then it became where it wasn't safe for me anymore, nor at home either. That's when I made the decision I better get some assistance, because I didn't want to be that guy that would have to call my kids in the middle of, although they were happy to, or not happy, I guess, but because they came home to a couple where I'd split open my head, and so it was getting kind of dangerous. So and they didn't force me, nor did they force me to stop driving, but I had 2 accidents in a short time. The second one could have been much more severe, so you got to make that decision. You want to take that off other people's plates and take self-responsibility for that. And it's easy to be stubborn, but sometimes we just got to do the right thing.
Right, absolutely. So now we have this next picture here. I believe back in 2023, you received the Friend Award, which is the award Stephanie Myers received today as well. But you received this award back in 2023 by the South Dakota Parkinson's Foundation. With this award, it honors those who offer a lot of their time and effort to assist the foundation and really increasing the awareness of those with Parkinson's and assisting that. And I know this award, you and I had talked about, we think about all the tulips, right? The petals for Parkinson's. So you helped, or that was your idea, right? And to kind of helped make that happen.
Yeah, between Stephanie and I, we kind of got that going, and that kind of lent itself to my business, because I never realized till that time that a tulip is the international or national symbol for Parkinson's disease. So I think at this point, what'd you sell this year? About 500? And they're on the tables, they're pre-potted. And once they die back and bloom out, then you can plant them in your garden too, so it's a gift that keeps on giving.
Right. They were beautiful this year. Paul, how's your voice doing? Do you need a drink?
I assume
Do you want to do some Mamie My Mo Moos while we're up here?
Is my voice getting softer?
Oh, you're doing well.
I don't know what you meant when you wanted to get a drink. Well, I'll keep it to water. It's early.
So now we're going to back up for a minute here. So, we've been talking about a little bit about your Parkinson's disease, but even before you were diagnosed, you had to overcome a lot of periods of adversity and hardship, which perhaps in our discussion you feel may have prepared you to take on Parkinson's disease. So in your 20s, you were involved in a pretty tragic car accident that caused you to endure a lot of chronic pain for many years. And I believe that's what this picture is. Can you tell us about that, Paul?
Yes, and pardon the picture. That's the front of my pickup, and obviously I believe in seat belts, but that time I did not want to have on. But the tire was sitting on the driver's seat, and the steering wheel was through the back of the seat. So it was only by the grace of God that I survived. I ended up underneath the dash on the passenger side. So, and then it was on what is now 69th Street. There was a gravel road. We met on a steep little hill, and there happened to be a gentleman waiting for his daughter's school bus. He'd always watch through binoculars to spot the bus. So he seen the accident, called 911 instantaneously. And I had severe rib cage and lung injuries, severely broken legs. Well, that took a long time to mend, but unfortunately I was left with a limp and pretty significant chronic pain for most of my life going forward. So I think that changed me a bit, but not when you're in your 20s yet. You still think you're bulletproof and think you can bounce back from anything. But then my second setback, and we'll talk about that a little later, that's when I think God was molding me into what I would later become in life.
Right. And that is our next slide here. So so after, like you said, after the car accident, living many years with chronic pain and recovering, if that wasn't enough, then in your 40s, right? You're in your 40s, while you were on vacation, you were bit by a recluse spider, which then turned into a necrotizing fasciitis in your leg. Can you tell us about that? What happened? I'll show this next picture here, Paul. But yeah, what happened with that bite and how did that transpire? So there's his leg.
Well, my wife and I had went to Cozumel, Mexico for a vacation, and I noticed that I had like a bug bite, which isn't unusual when you're on the beach and outdoors. And then we happened to get home, and then we were at Sunday dinner at my mother and father's place, and my mother seen that. It was nothing to be alarmed about. She said, like mothers do, she said, get your butt into the doctor. So I went in and had Lancey put me on some antibiotics. And then that night, my oldest son and I went to a basketball game, and I started feeling feverish and sick. And then I got violently ill the rest of the night, but my daughter had RSV, so my wife and I waited till the next morning. But by the next morning, this leg was about 3 times around, and I was septic, and it took a day, a day to figure out that it was necrotizing fasciitis, which in layman's terms is flesh-eating infection. And as miracles would have it, there was a doctor I think he was interning in Fargo, North Dakota, and he was it was Sioux Valley Hospital at that time. He had interned in Orange County, California, and he had this instructor or prof that pounded in his head that you'll probably never see this in your career, but this is what you have to do in that case. So it's like a wildfire. You got to remove flesh and soft tissue. It doesn't penetrate muscle, and they got it stopped at my waistline. So they had to remove all the tissue, and then grafts. They had just enough graft from the remainder of my body, and they took that flap of skin, they took off a blood vessel and so on. I know this is getting too lengthy, but I'm trying to explain it the best I can. So, and that was horrendous pain. I remember in the hospital, it felt like a wire brush, because before they'd graft new skin on, they had to make sure it was going to take, so that they'd go over with a scrub brush and then blow air on it. And I just remember hanging onto the pull-up bars on the hospital bed and just moaning, and all. It was just agony. It was like, and then I was in intensive care for 2 months. By the time I got out, I was pretty weak, so it was a long recovery, but that started to lead to my path of where I took faith more seriously in my life. I started noticing my family more and not taking things for as granted as I did before. And by no means is like perfect. My kids can attest to that, but I started to turn the corner.
That's a lot, Paul. I can't imagine.
The odds of getting that are very slim.
I was going to say, in thinking it was just a bite, like a bug bite or something, right? Initially.
Yes. So take them seriously. And you can get it from, I've heard of other instances where it starts from just a scratch or something. It's a strep type infection, but once it's present in everybody's body, but once it ignites, it gets a trigger, because it's got to be a deep bite or deep wound that's in the fascia that gets there.
And that could have been deadly.
Oh, it was most likely deadly.
I can't imagine.
Only by the grace of God I survived that, and tremendous medical care. But I think that's all connected in one.
Yes, to leading up to, this leads us up to your Parkinson's diagnosis. So were you in your middle 50s or late 50s when you were diagnosed?
I believe I was 53 or 54. I was somewhere, because I even forget how old I am now. My daughter had to remind me how old I was getting before my birthday.
So can you tell us, with that diagnosis, how that all transpired? What were your first symptoms? I know you talked about you were eventually diagnosed at Mayo Clinic, but what were those first symptoms that you noticed?
I was on methadone, which is an opioid drug, for 10 or 12 years, which I had prescribed, so I had taken that 4 times a day regularly. So then before that, my physician, I decided to go off that, because there was a whole nother set of issues with that. And that was a very major undertaking, going off opioids. But then once I was through that, then I could tell my neuropathy. I could tell I was dragging my feet. I'd stumble, and then my arms swing. And some of my mobility. I still didn't think anything of it. Then after months or however long, I don't know how long I've been showing symptoms, but I went to the doctor, and Dr. Jeff Boyle in Sioux Falls here, a very wonderful individual, and so he diagnosed it. And like you said, the best way to fight Parkinson's disease by physical activity and physical therapy. And I listened to some different forms that Dr. Ritter talked about, which I'm going to talk to him soon. Another wonderful physician as well. So, but it was basically, and this day I'm not much of a shaker. I have a little bit of a hand tremor, but I have excess saliva. In layman's term, I drool sometimes, and I don't know if anybody else in the crowd has had that. I had an overactive bladder, and my steps, you see me get out of my chair, my steps, I use a walker. I'm probably right on the edge of a wheelchair. Usually I use a stand-up walker, which has been another blessing. So, but it started out, I'm more of a gait and stiffness.
Right. So then you were diagnosed, you were at Mayo Clinic, and I know there's this quote here you said really stood out in your mind that one of your physicians told you. He said, if you're going to fall forward. Don't look at things to look back on. Or he said, if you're gonna fall forward, not back. And then you took that and interpreted it to life.
That's true. We're always looking for something. If something doesn't go right, we look for something to fall back on. But I put it, if you're going to fall forward, because then you can catch yourself on the way down, because we all stumble and fall. It's the old saying, fall down 7 times, get up 8. So I kind of, as soon as he said that, I kind of took that into kind of a different interpretation. So it's, I've used that. Because I have fallen several times, I've never fallen, and I hope I don't fall backwards tonight, but you always get yourself to catch on the way down.
Yep. So then you had that diagnosis, you continued to work full-time, right? You started your physical therapy, trying to keep active, keep moving. You said then you started using a walking stick for work, and then continue to work or to walk even 4 to 5 miles a day.
Yeah, because
initially.
in my career I walked many miles. Just it was part of my job. It's amazing how many feet you put on. So that was helpful for me. And within that, the walking stick I was relying on that more, and that kind of turned into more of a springboard into falling forward. So I had to set that aside. And then it was my dad's walking stick, and it was a large wood stick, which I thought had more leverage, but I had many people offer to buy that from me. It was kind of an old weathered walking stick. So now I should sell it cheap. I don't need it anymore. So then I graduated to a walker, which gave me more stability.
Yep. So next here, let's talk a little bit about how your Parkinson's progressed. What changes or adjustments did you make? I know you talked about the walking stick, and then you had to give up some things, thinking about driving, the independence.
It's like one of the first things, and this, some of you have probably went through this, others have this, we all have ahead of us at some point. I didn't think it would be when I was late 50s or early 60s, the ability to drive it. And that was suggested by myself, basically. My kids reaffirmed that with me. Once in a while I kid them I'm going to drive again. They kind of look at me with a sly smile and say, no, you're not. But that takes a lot of our liberty and pursuit of freedom away. And then I was home, and then I fell several times, and then me and my family made the decision I'm at Touchmark now, which, by the way, and I didn't go there kicking and screaming, but then I remembered the phrase, grow where you're planted, so that's where I was planted, so that's where I was going to stay, so I was going to look at it in the best way possible. And by no means am I perfect, but if I had a single, like in baseball, if I had a single 5 to 6 times out of 10, if I look at it in an upbeat spirit, that's a win. But the staff there is remarkable. And the food's pretty good as well.
So we think of a lot of emotions. I can't imagine the array of emotions that you would have experienced, throughout this process. You mentioned, in our discussions, acceptance was the hardest out of all these. So how did you deal with that and, trying to accept that diagnosis and what did you do to keep going? What helped you?
Well, first of all, it ultimately came down to my faith in God. And my kids were very helpful, relatives. It's amazing how many people came out of the woodwork to help me out. I have no complaints. A lot of people talk how many bad people there are in this world. I found out just the opposite. Younger, older, middle-aged. People are willing to help you, and most of the time you want to say no, but you're taking it because they want to help you, so you're taking the opportunity for them to help, especially young people. I think we got to say yes to them some of the times because they're there to help us, and it's their way of giving back. So just the general community, even strangers, have been just outstanding to me. So that's been very helpful. But acceptance is a tough road because, you think about why me for a while and feel sorry for yourself, but you just got to keep your chin up and keep marching forward, one step at a time, one day at a time. It's like don't count. I read something a while back that says, don't count your days, make your days count. And that's so true for all of us. Is every day is a gift, whether we're ill or if we're healthy, because life goes pretty darn quickly.
So yes, that leads us here. I know you like to use the term, and you've discussed this, tragic blessings. So with all that you've endured, you've told us your story about the accident, the pain, the spider bite, loss, losing independence, etc. Throughout all of that, you've had to really analyze your attitude, right? And somehow keep moving forward and account your blessings along the way. I know you're a positive guy and, you're always trying to see the light and trying to see the good in things. But you talk about these tragic blessings and what can you share with all of us, everyone here who's struggling to keep going, whether it's dealing with Parkinson's disease or, getting a new diagnosis of that, or anything else in life that we experience. How do we count our blessings? And I know you have some different quotes here. Tragic blessings and be your own hero.
Well, tragic blessings can be seen in a number of ways because I wouldn't have this if I didn't have Parkinson's. I wouldn't be able to be a witness to other people suffering that same affliction. But there comes a period once you have it, whether it be marriage, life, loss of a loved one, we're going to go through a mourning period. I had a very wise man. I had a buddy that his wife passed away in her late 50s of ovarian cancer, and Dave and John, friends of mine, stopped over and visited me, and John, who had lost his wife, said that David made a statement to him at the funeral. He said, "It's going to be tough, but you just got to walk through that." And no simple, no frills, don't make it complicated. And it's going to be complicated enough. But you go through a mourning period when you lose a part of your health. But you just got, it's never going to go away, but you just walk through it. And you'll end, whether it's the death of a loved one, ultimately the sun comes out again someday and you go through that deep depression or period of mourning. But just, you got to walk through it and keep. And when I was in that deep, dark depression, and the old saying, you've all heard this, is if you can affect one person a day and that butterflies off, whether, and
Then it
ask
was a good day.
ask people what's the best thing that's happened to them that day, because we can all say good, and that person might be suffering, because every day we have a pulpit where we can influence one people. So today I can hopefully get 3 people so then I can take a couple days off.
Need a break. And this other quote here, strength does not come from what you do, it comes from overcoming what you thought you could not do.
Yes, because that caught my eye, because I didn't think I had the mental or physical fortitude to get through something like this. Well, you get this supernatural, you get this adrenaline rush that gets you through every day, and it's just the old saying, one day at a time, then you get through the week, and then as you influence more people. And I know I go by month by month, my mobility and my ability to move is getting less and less. And I know I'll be in a full-time wheelchair soon, probably not be able to move at all, but I don't know when that is. So in the meantime, I'm going to pack every day as full as I can.
Yep, out of life's struggles, seeds begin to grow. Right? Bloom where you're planted, right?
Yes, because I always say I've talked to school-age children, and I always say that was my business. Seed germination is one of God's biggest miracles, because you think about it, you can grow a lot of food with one seed. So it's a good representation for kids to see it that way.
Yep. Let's see here. Don't count your days, make your days count.
And we've talked about that one, with that one. So fill your days with purpose as best you can. And if you have the ability, make sure you communicate with people.
Yep. Yep. So let's see here. So the theme of your talk today is bloom where you're planted. This leads us to some exciting news for you here, Paul. I understand you wrote a book that is recently, or it's in the process of getting published. The title is If Our Trees Could Talk, Discovering the Urban Forest of Sioux Falls. I know you put a lot of time and effort into the content of this book. It's something that you spent a lifetime, being passionate about in your business. Can you give us a brief overview of the book and why it's so important to you to write it? When will it be ready for purchase, and what's the meaning behind the book?
Well, I used to do a radio show, and it was called How's It Growing? I always said, picture Sioux Falls or a city without any trees. It'd be a pretty stark reality. So, and you never recognize the importance of a tree till it's gone. So this is pictures, sampling of a few trees around town, and gives life's purpose and purpose of trees. And there's Paul Schiller, who's one of the best photographers in the nation, helped with the photography, and Mike Cooper, the former city planner, him and I navigated through some of this together. So there's actually a book launch at Touchmark, May 22nd from 5 to 7. They're going to really promote it, which bless their hearts. And then it's going to be sponsored by the First Premier Bank as well. So it's time, so the exciting times ahead. So May 22nd. And there's food and water and wine and beverages, so anybody that cares to come, because Touchmark's a beautiful community too, so
Yes.
they're really, it's a win-win. Hopefully they get a lot of individuals and business people to look through their facilities, and gives the book good exposure. So, and there's a sign-up sheet if anybody cares to purchase the book. It's not available till that launch date, but if you'd care to get a phone call back or get an email, you're welcome to give that.
In the exhibit room where all the vendors are, Paul we have a table. He has a table set up with a flyer stating the date and the time, at the Touchmark book signing on May 22nd. So you can stop and pick that up if you would like. And we have a sign-up sheet, like you said, right? If you're interested, we can contact you when those books are ready. And the first 20 people to sign up on that sheet out there will get one of those gorgeous tulips, those pots of tulips sitting right on the table, right, Paul? That's how we're doing it?
Yes, that's correct.
So somebody will be contacting you, at least so you know when they're ready and available for purchase.
And the book is $49.95.
Yep.
We kind of kept the price down. The publisher donated some of the printing costs, so I think it's pretty affordable.
Beautiful pictures, yep. And also on the table out there, Paul's table, he has some bracelets. I've got one here with his famous logo. It says, "Bloom where you're planted." So these are free for the taking too, really as a reminder, right? We can look down as we wear them.
And there's some
Remember,
adhesive stickers
some
too
stickers for your
bottles
water
or-
bottle or computer. So again, those are in the exhibit hall available. How are we doing with time? Yeah. Is there a question? Does anybody have a question? Any questions for Paul? Or you'll be available out there as well at the exhibit booth.
Yeah,
Paul, we had Parkinson's. When were you diagnosed?
I believe 2017. And this is my prime time of day. Once 2, 3 o'clock and after, I really start to decline. So when Steph asked, I knew it had to be early.
Yeah. After that bourbon at 3.
Yes, exactly. And I'm
Really?
interested to hear more about that,
You have one?
the device that Dr. Ritter was talking about.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Anyone else have questions?
Molly has one.
Molly?
Paul, I have a question about the tulip bulbs. I've tried planting the tulip bulbs from the plants that we buy, and I haven't had any luck. What am I doing wrong? How deep? How far apart? I'm putting them the right way up, I know that.
Were you planting them in bunches or separating them?
I separated them. I
You
just
need-
used the bulbs from the plants that we brought home.
Yeah, really prepare your soil, make it so it's non-clay-like, and they don't like too wet of feet, because then they can start to decay or rot. So it's probably a combination of poor soil, which we have a lot of in this city, from backfill.
That's a good question, Molly.
That is.
All right, well, let's give him
I've got a
hand.
question back here.
Oh, sorry.
Diane?
Hi, Paul and Tina. My voice isn't very loud, but I'm trying to decrease it here. Paul, you talked about depression. I was wondering, when you live alone, how do people handle depression? And just go about your daily life, getting to appointments you need to go to, and getting around the house by yourself. I don't know if people can hear me or not.
Well, people, being around people energizes me, and being around family and friends, that's helpful. So stay busy, whether you go to Active Generation, you're always welcome at Touchmark, that facility. And when I have physical therapy, I always enjoy that. So try to keep physically active, which I know you do. Fill your day with activities, challenge yourself, do something out of your comfort zone, something you've never done before. That's what, and I'm by no means an expert on Parkinson's or mental health or any of this. This is just what has helped me. Looks like everybody's ready for lunch.
What's for lunch?
Paul, you're an inspiration to all of us. Let's give him a hand.
Thank you, Paul, for sharing your story with us.